Hey, Leonard. Welcome back to the Emily Show. This week, we're taking EDB Air out of Utah. I know, Emily, there's still so much going on in Utah. Yes, there is a lot going on in Utah, but we are going to Arizona this week because there is a whole lot going on in Arizona. And there have been some headlines that I've seen. I'm like, that's just not accurate. You know how Emily feels about it. Well, actually, that's not exactly correct. Yeah, I feel real strongly about that. You know that I do. So today we are going to be covering what's going on, not only in the Nancy Guthrie investigation, but in the fallout within Pima County Sheriffs, because, oh boy, is there a lot going on with Pima County Sheriff Nanos and others. You're not going to believe some of this. I can't either. Buckle up. We've got a lot to discuss in Arizona. So let's get into it. I'm legal analyst Emily D. Baker, yes, also a lawyer, and this is The Emily Show. I break down the pop culture, entertainment, and high-profile cases that we're all talking about. I know you want the facts, so let's get into it. Leonard, I know today is all going to be criminal docket because we are talking about the Nancy Guthrie investigation. We are talking about Sheriff Nanos. I guess some of that might be civil docket, but not really, kind of. Sort of, and then the arrest of a Pima County Sheriff's deputy. Today is going to be a bit heavy because we are going to be talking about Savannah Guthrie's interview that she just gave with Today. She gave some new information. I would like to talk to you about what I think some of that information points to or means, and at the heart of all of it, Savannah Guthrie will be returning to the Today Show on April 7th. So at the end of the interviews that were put out over 3 days last week, we get to the kind of totality of the circumstances. And what I am going to talk about with you today are some of the clips about the investigation. She shares much more in this interview. We are going to link it if you want to go watch the entirety, because thankfully NBC actually did put out all of the shorter interview bits together in a 35-minute video, so you can go watch all of the conversation that has been shared. And if you are listening in the background, this interview is between Savannah Guthrie and Hoda. Savannah and Hoda, during this conversation, unlike other conversations I've heard, Hoda's mic is on and you can hear her responding to Savannah Guthrie. So if you're like, is that Emily? It's not me. It's not me. When I'm talking, but it is often Hoda just being like, You will hear that in this interview, different than some interviews I have heard on NBC. So it's not EDB in the background for those. We are also going to be talking about embattled at this point Sheriff Nanos, because some really significant stuff happened with him last week, including some allegations that he lied in a recent deposition. Emily, lying in a deposition sounds like perjury. Yeah, we're going to talk about that because I have a lot of questions. And then a Pima County Sheriff's officer was arrested for kidnapping. It is not connected to this case. It does not seem to be connected to this case, but the fact that it was a Pima County Sheriff and they were arrested for kidnapping, the headlines have been wild. My DA brain looks at this and is like, yes, I understand why they have charged it with kidnapping, but in my brain, it's more of a false imprisonment than a kidnapping. But at the end of the day, that's not going to matter all that much. We are going to talk about the facts surrounding that briefly, and I'm going to keep an eye on that case in the future because I am curious to see what happens. The facts of that case are sad and really just make me mad, but it was very quickly investigated and is very rapidly being prosecuted, but it is not connected to Nancy Guthrie. So let's start with talking about what is, and that is the new information from the interview with Savannah Guthrie. And remember, Nancy Guthrie has not been seen since January 31st, 2026. That's more than 57 days at the time of recording. Yes, it's that late that it's going to change. It happens sometimes. But we are going on 2 months of Nancy Guthrie being missing. And the significant case updates have very much slowed down. And we know that going through things like cell phone tower dumps can be a slog, but we are getting to a point where some of the avenues that I was hoping would be fruitful closed while we were in Utah talking about Corey Richins. That includes those gloves that I had a lot of questions about. You know, I was like, okay, they're gloves from like 2 miles away. There apparently are gloves everywhere. What's going on with the gloves? And the DNA hadn't been back. Well, during the Corey Richins trial, the DNA on those gloves that were waiting to be tested from like 2 miles away were finally tested, and they tracked back the DNA on those gloves to a local restaurant employee not connected in any way with this case. So while there was hope regarding the gloves, those gloves are a dead end. However, there were still mixed DNA profiles from within the home, is what we had heard with regard to Nancy Guthrie. So we will see if those DNA profiles come up with any leads that are fruitful. But the main updates we have from this case are from Savannah Guthrie herself. First, she had put out additional posts during the time that we were in trial, including a refocus back on the days prior to Nancy Guthrie going missing, including this January 11th date that we have heard about. And Savannah was asking the public again to look at cameras, think back, see if there's anything on this January 11th date. And though there's been a lot of speculation about this date and why that is coming up, what we know is that this is a date that's significant to law enforcement, and anyone with any information can contact them. But there was, at one point, the sheriff was saying, I don't know why people are talking about that date. I'm like, well, I do. It was in one of the first press conferences. There were multiple times that this date has come up. And then the sheriff was like, I don't know why everybody's talking about it. Well, the FBI had asked about it. And then Savannah Guthrie asked about it. And then the sheriff was like, oh, yeah, any information about that date? We'll get to Sheriff Nanos in a bit. But in going through this interview, Savannah started the conversation being asked about how she found out her mom was missing. We're going to look at that. And then we're going to hear from her about conversations early on with the sheriff, information that we have not heard before. And I'm going to highlight some of those things because there are some key pieces of information that might tie back into some of those ransom letters. And maybe the reason we hadn't heard this before is because they were still tracking down whether the ransom letters were valid or the ransom communications were valid or not. And now these details are being released because that avenue is also now closed. That is my speculation. That's what I wonder about in having some of these new details out in the public.
And my sister called me and I said, is everything okay? Mm-hmm. And she said, no. She said, Mom's missing. And I said, what? Yeah. What are you talking about? She said, she's gone. And she was in a panic. I was in a panic. I'm like, call 911. Yeah. She's like, I did. We called them. They're here. And we thought that she must have had like some kind of medical episode in the night, and that somehow, the paramedics had come because the back doors were propped open, and that didn't make any sense. We thought maybe they came and there was a stretcher and they took her out the back. But her phone was there and her purse was there and all her things. Yeah. And it just didn't make any sense. So, Annie and Tommy had already called all the hospitals, but then I'm like, I'm going to call the hospital. So then I started calling the hospitals, and the police were there and talking to her at the same time. And it was just chaos.
Yeah. What we hear from Savannah Guthrie is that the back door was propped open. We had heard some reporting that the back door was open or wide open or left open, but it is interesting to have confirmation that the back door was propped open to the point that they considered that possibly what had happened is that there was a medical emergency and paramedics had taken her to the hospital, and her sister had called hospitals with her brother-in-law, Tommy, But she started calling hospitals as well. But what else did she indicate? That Nancy's purse was still there, her phone was still there, and all her things were still there. So when we are looking at Nancy Guthrie being taken in the middle of the night, everything that belonged to her was left there. And we had heard about her phone and her watch. We hadn't heard necessarily about her purse and other possessions, but it didn't make sense to them because everything was still there. And the first thing they thought was medical emergency. And then they had a conversation with the sheriff.
Just disbelief and hugging each other.
Yeah.
And I think we were on the phone with the sheriff and trying to, really make clear from the very early moments, Annie and Tommy were saying this isn't that case that
Right.
you are used to where someone wanders off. She can't wander off.
Mhm.
My mom, she was in tremendous pain.
Yeah.
Her back was very bad. She was trying to, on a good day, she could walk down to the mailbox and get the mail, but most days not. So there was no wander off. And the doors were propped open.
Yeah.
And there was blood on the front doorstep. And the Ring camera had been yanked off.
Yeah.
And so we were saying, this is...
Yeah. Do something.
This is not
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
This isn't, something is very wrong here.
Yeah.
Does it sound to you like in the earliest moments of speaking with law enforcement, Savannah Guthrie and her family felt like they were having to escalate the concern from the sheriff? She said, I think we were on the phone with the sheriff, and she's talking about when she gets to Arizona and we're explaining this isn't the normal case. My mom is not that mobile. She's not wandering off. There's blood, the doors. And now she's saying doors. And I wonder if she means that there's like French back doors that are propped open. The doors are propped open. The video doorbell is yanked off the wall. And this is essentially, it sounds like what they're saying is that this is a crime scene. But we remember in the earliest parts of this, the sheriff's department seemed to treat it as search and rescue. And I wonder if what we are hearing in this interview is that in the earliest conversations, there was already frustration of, no, she isn't just missing. There was something much more disturbing here. So can we do all the things to try to find her? Because we have doors open, we have video cameras taken, all of her things are here, and there is blood. It sounds like that even at the beginning, there was a bit of tension here. At least that's what I'm hearing from this interview. And it's hard to know how much of this is hindsight and how much frustration there is from the Guthrie family now, because of course there is tremendous frustration and sorrow that they don't have any clear answers. But though calling hospitals and this isn't just someone wandering off were Savannah's earliest thoughts, her older brother had some other thoughts, and she goes on to explain that he had been in the military, he worked in intelligence, and she describes that he knew right away what this was, which gives us some new information about what the family was thinking and maybe why they were making some of those communications on social media that we have seen throughout the last 50 plus days.
He saw very clearly right away what this was.
Yeah.
And even on the phone, when I called him, he knew.
He knew.
And he said, I think she's been kidnapped for ransom. And I said,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Well, why? What? And then, it sounds so like how dumb could I be? But I didn't want to believe. I just said, do you think because of me? And he said, I'm sorry, sweetie, but yeah, maybe.
And it is of course, something that has been part of the conversation and heartbreaking to hear Savannah talk about the fact that she and her family have had to discuss whether or not Nancy Guthrie was taken because of her work, because she is a high-profile individual, and because she is perceived as a high net worth individual, and whether or not this simply had to do with her. And she talks about the fact that she and her family have grappled with that. She talks about the fact that she's sorry for that and heartbroken about that, because of course she is. But they thought very early on that this was a kidnapping for ransom. She said even when she was on the phone with her brother, that's one of the first things his mind went to, which is interesting because if you go back and watch the podcasts from the beginning of this, there are things in here that do not line up with a traditional ransom case. And of course, not having any proof of life when you are dealing with the kidnapping of somebody who is in their 80s is concerning, but also not having any communications until February 5th. She was taken overnight, January 31st to February 1st. That is a very long time to not have any communications if this was a kidnapping for ransom. So there are still things in this case that I have questions about. If this was planned out as a kidnapping for ransom, why were the communications so slow? And then why were they sent to TMZ? In talking about the ransom, Savannah goes on to talk about making the videos for social media and what she thought of the ransom communications that were received. And I wish there was some follow-up on this because I have questions. So let's take a look at what Savannah had to say about her communications and the ransom communications.
We did our best to come up with the words to say. And I haven't posted one thing or said one thing that the three of us haven't decided together. It is surreal. How is it possible that we are having to make a video speaking to a kidnapper?
And we had talked about this when those videos came out, that it did feel like Savannah was trying to talk to the person, the unknown person or persons who had her mom. And she confirms that, saying that she and her siblings were trying to come up with the words to talk to the person who kidnapped their mother.
Who took an 84-year-old woman in the dead of night in her pajamas with no shoes, without her medicine. This little person. And to beg for mercy.
And there's new information there too, that Nancy Guthrie was taken in her pajamas without her medication, which we knew, with no shoes. And I don't know if that's an assumption or if that's them looking around saying all of her shoes are here. And again, it makes me wonder, if you are kidnapping and planning to hold and try to ransom an 84-year-old woman, and you take her out of her home without the things that she is going to need to survive long term, it raises a lot of very grim questions for me. Continuing speaking about the ransom communications, Savannah says this.
Did you believe those to be real?
There are a lot of different notes, I think, that came. And I think most of them, it's my understanding, are not real. And I didn't see them. But, you know, a person that would send a fake ransom note really has to look deeply at themselves.
Yeah.
To a family in pain. But I believe the two notes that we received, that we responded to, I tend to believe those are real.
Really?
I very much wish we had more clarification on which 2 notes she's referring to, why she believed they were real, and then what happened. Are those the notes that were asking for a specific amount of money with Bitcoin wallet information? And if so, and they were responding to them, which social media posts were responding? Or were all of those early social media posts responding to them? Because there were social media posts indicating that they would pay, and then there was no indication that the ransom was paid. And how did they determine that? I have so many more questions about the communications, and that is just I have questions about this investigation and this entire disappearance, just period. How they determined which ones were or had some veracity, and she said she didn't see them all. Was that filtered through by law enforcement? I just have a lot of questions on how that worked. But when it seemed that those social media videos were responding directly, she says that they were. Again, I'm of 2 minds on this, because whoever did this has thus far avoided detection to the point where the public knows about it, right? There hasn't been an arrest. There has not been a be on the lookout for a specific car or license plate or individual. And while law enforcement hopefully knows much more than we do, this seems to have evaded, at least up until now. And so there is aspects of this that you wonder if this was planned and what anybody was thinking. But then there's aspects of this where it seems that it was, because again, there are still no answers. And after talking about the fact that Nancy Guthrie was taken in her pajamas, without her shoes, medication, cell phone, watch, purse, they talk about the doorbell camera video that was recovered by the company, seemingly at the pressing of the FBI.
I mean, it's just absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
It's just totally terrifying. And I can't imagine that is who she saw standing over her bed.
Yeah.
I can't. It's too much.
Yeah.
And I'm glad and grateful to the investigators and the technology companies that were able to find that video. Do I hope, at least with people of good heart and compassion, stop the irresponsible and cruel speculation that had started to swirl.
Let's talk about that for a minute.
I'm glad that people saw
Yeah.
what came to our door.
I'm not surprised that one of the things that Savannah Guthrie was thankful for is that having video from the doorbell camera at least started to give them a direction of who might have done this, but also stopped some of the online speculation about who could have done this. And it's something that in at least all of the recent high-profile cases we've been looking at can be a tremendous problem, and something that happens almost feverishly in cases where there aren't answers. There is a rush to fill in the gaps of what is unknown and move on. And it's really uncomfortable to not know. We can see how devastating that is for Savannah Guthrie to not know, but it had to be almost as devastating to have speculation pointing the finger back at her family members. And she talked in this interview now twice about her mother being taken out of bed, what came to her bedside, what came to her door. And it seems to me that the family is fairly convinced Nancy Guthrie was taken from her bed. She did not go answer the door was not knocked on, that she was taken out of her bed. So in this conversation, we have learned that The family believes, and I imagine a lot of that information is coming from law enforcement, plus what they have seen in their mom's home, that Nancy Guthrie was taken directly from her bed, as I've said, without her shoes, in her nightgown, no phone, no purse, no watch, no medication. Which raises a lot of questions for me, but also Savannah Guthrie believes that 2 of the communications they received were real and that those were things they were responding to in the videos that she made for social media, some with her siblings, some without, but they had a purpose, as we discussed closer in time to when those videos came out. We also learned that there was blood inside the house near the front door. We had already known that there were blood drops outside the home. And it raises some questions if those were just near the door area, but it seems that those were just near the door area based on what Savannah Guthrie has said. And we also learned that initially they wondered if Nancy Guthrie was taken from the home by paramedics out the back door because the back doors were propped open, and that Savannah's brother said very early on he thought that this was a kidnap for ransom. And it sounds like they were trying to tell the sheriff, no, this is a crime. This is not, our mom didn't wander off. She most days can't walk out to the mailbox on her own. This is more than that. The doors are open and there's blood and she has none of her things. And the frustration of having to try to have law enforcement see it the way you see it, especially in the terrifying early hours and days of not knowing what's happening. However, as time wears on, there's a heaviness to that. And I think Savannah summed it up pretty well when she said this.
Honestly, we don't know anything.
No.
We don't know anything. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Almost 2 months in, and the Guthrie family still feels like they don't know anything. And that's because there just really seems to not be much else to know. In that interview, she talks about her mom more. She talks about growing up in the home that we have now seen on the news day after day. Talks about growing up there, talks about losing her father at 16, talks about her faith and her mom's faith, but also talks about the fact that she believes her mom is with God at this point. Though she is holding out hope to find out what happens, it seems throughout the way she is discussing things in this interview that that hope is for answers and closure, and that she does not expect that they will find her mom alive at this point, which I think is reasonable. I think you have to just brace yourself. But I imagine that the Guthrie family would rather just know than be stuck in the not knowing. And she talks about how difficult it is to try to navigate whether she comes back to work or doesn't come back to work, and to rejoin her colleagues, and how her life was before she got the phone call from her family that her mom was missing, which is a really hard thing to do. And she talks about how difficult she thinks it will be to navigate that. But I guess we will see at the beginning of April how that goes for Savannah Guthrie. But while she is trying to figure out what putting one foot in front of the other looks like, while still not knowing what happened to her mother, there are others that are going to be trying to figure out what putting one foot in front of the other looks like. And that journey might be substantially different, because the smoke is coming for Sheriff Nanos. We need to talk about it. Law Nerd, we're going to take a quick minute to thank our sponsor, OneSkin. What I love about OneSkin is it just simplifies my skincare routine. I love the simplicity of my face cream and an eye cream. And this is the routine. The founding team are longevity researchers who asked a deceptively simple question. If many visible signs of aging are driven by these so-called zombie cells, what if you could just reduce those cells and slow down the aging process instead of just covering it up? And all of that research led to OS1, which is OneSkin's proprietary peptide. It's the first ingredient proven to switch off those cells, which actually slows skin aging at the source. OneSkin products are backed by extensive lab and clinical data, including 4 peer-reviewed clinical studies, and have over 10,000 five-star reviews. Born from over a decade of longevity research, OneSkin's OS1 peptide is proven to target visible signs of aging, helping you unlock your healthiest skin now and as you age. So Leonard, if you're ready to check it out, now is the time, because for a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off by using code Leonard at oneskin.co/Leonard. That's 15% off at oneskin.co with code Leonard. And if they ask how you heard about them, please let them know it was the Emily Show. Now let's get back into it. So maybe we have a smidgen of pop culture docket here, because I think it's appropriate at this point to remind you that Sheriff Nanos and Pima County Sheriff's Department are the subject of a reality series called Desert Law that premiered in January of this year, 2026. And I don't know if cameras are up or cameras are down, but the amount of times we're talking about stuff going on here and I'm like, are cameras up? I need Andy and a camera. Are cameras up? Are cameras down? I don't even know at this point. But I say this about reality show contestants, participants, celebrities, cast, all the time. If you know, insert thing, why are you on reality TV? C.E.G. Genshaw, amongst others. And I didn't think I would have the same question for Sheriff Nanos, and now I do. And you're bracing yourself. Oh God, Emily, what are we talking about that we have concerns about why Sheriff Nanos thought that bringing TV cameras in was going to be a good idea? Well, let me tell you what. First, there has been a vote of no confidence from the union regarding Sheriff Nanos, but that's not the first time that has happened. Second, the Board of Supervisors are starting to investigate the sheriff based on a number of things, one of which is that it appears that during a deposition regarding a lawsuit that is ongoing involving the sheriff in his official capacity, he lied about his prior disciplinary history. So now we have concerns of perjury. And when the Board of Supervisors met on Tuesday, March 24th, they had put conversation about the Pima County Sheriff onto their meeting agenda so they could discuss not only the apparent misrepresentation during a sworn deposition, but also whether or not the sheriff lied about his work history when he was hired initially in Pima County, whether or not the accusations of election interference are credible or not, and whether additional contradictions indicate that he, A, needs to be investigated more by the Board of Supervisors, B, whether there's going to be more traction on calls to have him resign, and whether or not there will need to be a special election to have him recalled. But it seems that the troubles for Sheriff Nanos are mounting in a significant way. Let's take a look at the union's no confidence vote. We are looking at a post from the Pima County Deputies Organization. This is the union for the sheriff's deputies, stating, quote, PCDO deputies vote unanimous no confidence in Sheriff Nanos and call for his resignation. Let's read the included statement. It says, Pima County Deputies Organization announces unanimous vote of no confidence in Sheriff Chris Nanos and calls for his resignation. PCDO represents over 300 deputies in the Pima County Sheriff's Department and has unanimously voted no confidence in Sheriff Chris Nanos and calls for his resignation. This action follows recent revelations about Nanos' extensive disciplinary history with the El Paso Police Department that he apparently failed to disclose to the department and the public for over 40 years. Emily, what? Yeah, 40 years. They go on to say that El Paso Police Department records show that Nanos served from 1976 to 1982 and was suspended 8 separate times, resulting in a cumulative 37 days of suspension or leave without pay. These disciplinary actions stemmed from numerous allegations, including excessive force, which they say, in parentheses, including a 15-day suspension for allegedly striking a suspect in the head during an arrest, resulting in an injury requiring intensive care, discharge of his firearm, illegal gambling, habitual tardiness. I mean, Emily, you're taking things personally. Yeah, I'm just going to carve that one out. But it seems like the rest of them are really bad. Illegal gambling, failure to report for duty, insubordination, making threats, dereliction of duty, improper use of a siren. What are you doing with the wee-woos? And other violations of rules and regulations. Nanos ultimately resigned in 1982 in lieu of termination with insubordination and consistent inefficiency listed as his reason for departure. How then do you get hired again? They go on to say these documented issues apparently withheld when he applied as a correction officer with PCSD raise serious concerns about leadership fitness and set a troubling precedent for the department. Deputies cannot serve effectively under leadership with such a history of repeated disciplinary problems, considering it is unlikely he would have been certified as a peace officer in Arizona if it was properly disclosed. Yeah. How did he leave Texas and become a sworn peace officer? It goes on to say, how can a law enforcement officer be hired and disciplined by someone whose history should have precluded them from ever being one in this state? More about hiring in a minute. We're going to talk about that. A unanimous vote of no confidence, they go on to say, is a resounding rejection of Sheriff Nanos' leadership, combined with a documented pattern of early career disciplinary issues and ongoing departmental challenges, including mismanagement, retaliation, and eroded morale. This has created an untenable situation for our deputies and the community we serve. Sheriff Chris Nanos should resign immediately to restore trust, accountability, and operational effectiveness to the Pima County Sheriff's Department. This would allow time for a special election where the voters can make an informed, that's underlined, decision about the future of our agency. The PCDO calls for Sheriff Nanos to step down without delay. Continued leadership under these circumstances jeopardizes public safety, departmental morale, and the credibility of law enforcement in Pima County. The organization urges the Pima County Board of Supervisors, elected officials, and the community to support this call for resignation and demand swift, meaningful change. The vote of no confidence was posted on March 23rd. The Board of Supervisors discussed this on March 24th and are looking into whether or not they can have Nanos essentially brought before the Board of Supervisors under oath to answer some of these questions. And then you have a Pima County Sheriff's deputy who seems fairly new on the job because he is 22 years old, arrested on Thursday, March 26th, for kidnapping, what I would call false imprisonment, but for kidnapping with some horrific factual circumstances that we're going to talk about after we finish talking about Sheriff Nanos. He was arraigned on felony charges on March 27th. So when I say it has been a very busy week for Pima County Sheriffs, it has been a very busy week for Pima County Sheriffs. But that's not all. According to the Arizona Republic reporting, they dive a bit more into what happened in this sworn deposition. Their headline is Pima County Sheriff misrepresented discipline history in sworn testimony. Let's take a look. They report that 3 months ago, under oath in a Tucson conference room, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos was asked if he had ever been suspended as a law enforcement officer. Nanos said no, according to a deposition transcript reviewed by the Arizona Republic. That statement is at odds with the sheriff's record. Nanos was suspended 8 separate times as a young police officer in Texas, according to employment records from the El Paso Police Department. The deposition came to light after the Republic uncovered new details about his departure from the El Paso Police Department in 1982. At least the reporters are on the job. The reporters are like, hey, we have questions. If the reporters can go and get the disciplinary records from Texas from 1982. How did no one know this for this long? Who was doing the background checks? Or were they just like, it's all good? I don't know how this went so long. It's staggering to me. No wonder the Board of Supervisors is pissed. If he doesn't resign, I think the Board of Supervisors has some pretty solid grounds to yeet, especially when they look at this deposition. Emily, you always say perjury is really difficult. Yeah, perjury can be really difficult, especially when things are matter of opinion and the answers aren't super black and white. However, if the question verbatim is, have you ever been suspended as a law enforcement officer? Not a Pima County Sheriff, not while you're with Pima County Sheriffs. If that is the question verbatim and the answer is no, it is sworn, it is a deposition, and it is directly at odds with an employment record. That is a circumstance where there's not a lot of wiggle. It's not a half non-answer. It's not based on feelings. It's a statement of fact. So if that question is phrased that way, it does seem that they have some pretty solid grounds to continue digging, because the employment record indicates that he was suspended 8 times and resigned instead of being terminated. Which also, can we stop allowing people to resign instead of being terminated when there are valid grounds for their termination that include things like excessive force? Because the termination should raise some red flags. The resignation should have raised some red flags. They go on to say that the sheriff in his second term has brushed off questions about his employment history, saying that the incidents happened decades ago. However, Nanos was asked about his past as recently as December, the transcript shows, and he misrepresented his work history, they are reporting. Nanos under heightened scrutiny as the search for missing 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie continues, declined to answer questions about the deposition. Ignore her, he wrote in an email to the Republic. I have so many questions. Like, was he being asked about Nancy Guthrie and said ignore Nancy, or ignore her directed at the reporter, which seems that maybe is what this is, that the ignore her was to the reporter and he didn't mean to reply all? Is that what happened here? They ignore her? I think her could modify the reporter asking questions about the deposition. He declined to answer questions about the deposition. Ignore her, he wrote in an email to the Republic. 2 minutes later, he sent another message. We have reply all problems, don't we? Quote, we never speak to cases under litigation, Nanos wrote. Oh, so you didn't mean to tell the reporter that you were going to ignore her. You meant to tell someone else to ignore her? Good. Nanos discussed his disciplinary record December 11th while offering sworn testimony in a deposition. The deposition was part of the sheriff's legal battle with Sergeant Aaron Cross, an outspoken Nanos critic and the president of the Pima County Sheriff's Deputy Organization. Oh, the one that just voted unanimously with no confidence? That's some new detail. Cross is suing Nanos over an incident stemming from the sheriff's 2024 re-election bid. He shared a partial deposition transcript with the Republic. Well, there you go. Oh, Emily, keep reading. They quote it verbatim. They're saying that Cross's lawyer began the December 11th deposition by discussing ground rules with Nanos. From there, the conversation turned to the sheriff's career and disciplinary history. Quote, have you ever received discipline as a law enforcement officer? He asked, and they're saying this is according to the transcript. Nanos said yes and explained that he's, quote, not a very good driver. Quote, so I had a lot of car accidents. So, letter for this or documented verbal for that. I have so many questions. What do you mean a lot of car accidents? The lawyer continued his line of questioning. Quote, did you ever receive a discipline that rose to the level of suspension? Nanos answered no. Oh dear. And then they go on to say that despite Nanos' sworn testimony, public records show he was suspended more than half a dozen times from 1977 to 1982, and he was placed on leave without pay 3 other times. In August of 1982, they say Nanos resigned instead of termination. His supervisors listed insubordination and consistent inefficiency as reasons for the departure. So how did he get hired in Pima County? They say Nanos was suspended or put on leave without pay for a cumulative 37 days during his time at the El Paso department, according to a Republic review of the employment documents. They go on to say that the department amended Nanos's public resume. Nanos has not said much about his work history in El Paso. Gee, I wonder why. He initially declined to answer the Republic's question. Quote, "That's your, quote, urgent request? You sure you don't want to go back to my high school and ask why I got swats from the principal? Good luck with your hit piece," Nanos wrote in a March 9th email to the Republic. Oh, the audacity. "That's your urgent request. You sure you don't want to go back to my high school?" Sir, you were suspended for more than 37 days without pay in a very brief period of employment, and you think it's jokes. Oh boy. They go on to say that the next day, the Pima County Sheriff's Department announced that it had amended the public resume after the Arizona Republic found the document misrepresented his departure from El Paso police by saying he left the department in 1984. Nanos also gave a friendly interview about the Republic's reporting to Tucson television station KVOA. Nanos said in the March 10th segment he's proud of his colorful past, which included wrecking 5 patrol cars. What? Also, we have seen much conversation around this from Brian Enton and others, saying that Nanos would not give press conferences and handpick those that he liked in a very, to me, courthouse Becky-ish way of like, oh, you're playing nice with me, I'll play nice to you. And even when Brian Enton talked about doing an interview with Nanos, he said a good part of one of the interviews with Sheriff Nanos was Sheriff Nanos questioning him about things he had said in his reporting. So it doesn't surprise me at all that he's got his faves who are going to say nicey nice about him. He's proud of his colorful past, including wrecking 5 patrol cars. How do you not get fired for that? He goes on to say, "It's what shaped me throughout my career, not just the experiences I had then, but growing up through all of it. In 40 years here in Pima County, I don't think I've had any discipline. I mean, I think you're saying the quiet part out loud. I think you mean other people haven't disciplined you, but we're going to let that go." They go on to say that Nanos' resume states that he took a job as a corrections officer with Pima County Sheriff's Department in 1984, though he said in the deposition that he started the job in the fall of 1983. That was the fall of 83, yeah, and then started as a correction officer, and then about the, I think, summer or fall of 84, I transferred over to deputy. That concerns me less. It concerns me less between 83 and 84, exactly when you started, given the passage of time. I am more concerned about the I've never been suspended. And yeah, I mean, we all make mistakes. Whoopsies, I crashed 5 vehicles. It goes on to say that Nanos worked his way up the Sheriff's Department ranks for decades. When former Democratic Sheriff Clarence Dupnick retired in 2015, the Pima County Board of Supervisors appointed Nanos to replace him as interim sheriff. Oh, the Board of Supervisors are going to feel some kind of way about all this. They already do. That's why it's on their agenda. They say that Nanos lost his first sheriff bid in 2016. He ran again and won in 2020. He was narrowly reelected in a bitter 2024 race. How do you think the residents of Pima County are feeling? Because I have a sense that they're not feeling too pleased about any of this. It is hard to unseat an incumbent in a race where many in the county might not know that much. They're like, oh, that's the guy who's the guy now? Okay, fine. That's going to be big different now. So where do we go from here with Sheriff Nanos? Well, it'll be interesting to see if he has any more to say about all of this now that the Board of Supervisors is involved and trying to see if they can essentially depose him about this as well. It'll be interesting to see if the statements in the deposition are forwarded along to the Board of Supervisors, because the Board of Supervisors is not happy with this at all. And there remains a very big question. If he misrepresented his departure from El Paso, could it give the Board of Supervisor grounds to essentially oust the sheriff? Or will he resign? I don't think he's going to resign, but I am somewhat stunned that all of this wasn't found. And I guess I'm just going to keep being surprised when you think people are doing their job and they're just not, because he shouldn't have been hired in the first place given that record. And if you know that when all eyes are on you, and I don't think Sheriff Nanos thought all eyes were going to be on him because of a case. I wonder if he thought that all eyes were going to be on him, all eyes on me in the middle of a ring, just like a circus. I wonder if he was just walking up like it's Britney bitch on Desert Law, being like, yeah, come take a look at what we're doing, because the behavior seems to track. But how are you deciding that you want to bring that attention to yourself with all of this under the surface? Maybe because nobody has mentioned it for 40 years, but it seems like we're now thoroughly within mention it all. We're just going to mention it all. The digging in to Sheriff Nanos's past employment and more is not going to stop, especially given what just went down with a different Pima County Sheriff's deputy. We need to talk about that arrest right now. Hey, Leonard, a quick note from our sponsor today, Lola Blankets. It is speeding towards the time of year where we are thinking about graduation and Mother's Day and more. And if you are stuck on what to give as a gift, Lola Blankets has you covered. One of the things I love most about Lola Blankets is that they are machine washable, and truly, it does look as good coming out of the wash as it does going in, and it holds up amazingly. It is the softest blanket we have ever owned, and it is my go-to for gifts. And actually, the very first Lola blanket I ever owned was a gift to me. So not only is it one of my go-to gifts to give, but it is also a gift I love to receive. Lola has so many colors and styles. It's going to fit with whatever room in your house or individual you are choosing to gift it to. And they're gonna love it because Lola has over 20,000 5-star reviews. There's a reason it's called the world's #1 blanket. It's the gift that people don't stop raving about. So Leonard, I know you're ready to check out Lola Blankets for yourself or for a loved one. And for a limited time, our Emily Show listeners get 40% off. You heard me right, 40% off select Lola Blanket products with code LAWNERD. So just head to lolablankets.com and use code LAWNERD at checkout. And if they ask how you heard about them, let them know it was the Emily Show. And then you'll be wrapping yourself in luxury with Lola Blankets. Let's get back to today's episode. As we begin to talk about this arrest and arraignment, I'm going to just give you the heads up that the facts of this are just disturbing and sad, and you're going to be angry. Just buckle up. You're going to be pissed. I am also somewhat pissed that given this arrest for kidnapping, so many headlines rushed to talk about a Pima County Sheriff's deputy arrested for kidnapping and showing images seeming to align it with Nancy Guthrie. So many reaching to pull this in connection with Nancy Guthrie. It is not connected to the Nancy Guthrie case. The only reason they're coming up in the same sentence is because it is a Pima County Sheriff's deputy. And as we talk about this, we are in the earliest stages of a criminal case. All of the facts are alleged because this is the early days of a criminal case. And these are the allegations against the 22-year-old Pima County Sheriff's deputy who was arrested March 26th for an incident that happened on March 19th and arraigned on March 27th. He is due back in court on April 6th for a preliminary hearing. As we go through the facts in this, one of the big takeaways for me is how fast this happened. From the incident on March 19th to an arrest on March 26th is a quick investigation and decision to prosecute. And that gives me a little bit of hope that there are others that are also done with whatever fuckery this is. So what are we talking about? Let's go to reporting from KVOA, and then we are going to take a look at the arraignment. Pima County deputy allegedly held woman in PCSD vehicle, court documents reveal. A Pima County Sheriff's Department deputy has been arrested and is facing charges of kidnapping. Editorial from Emily, amongst others. He is accused of holding a woman inside of his sheriff's vehicle prior to taking her inside the Pima County jail. Travis Reynolds, 22, is being held on $200,000 bond. They detail the facts of this incident as follows. On March 19th, Reynolds was on duty and transporting a woman to the Pima County Jail. The victim told police that he commented on her appearance, saying that she was quote unquote hot and a MILF. Once they arrived at the jail, Reynolds reportedly reversed his department vehicle near the back wall before exiting the driver's side and approaching the victim's side. The victim mentioned to authorities that the 22-year-old moved her hands, which were in handcuffs, from behind her body to in front of her body. According to court documents, Reynolds re-entered the vehicle and allegedly shared a vape pen with the woman as they had a conversation. The victim told police the former deputy stated he could help her with her case and reportedly suggested that they go to a hotel to work it out. They explicitly spelled that out, saying that he suggested they could go to a hotel to engage in sexual activity. Court documents revealed that the woman stated that Reynolds showed her multiple videos on his phone of a man engaging in sexual activities, which she said appeared to be him. Which raises the question, how much more are they investigating? Because I hope it's a lot. I fear he was not caught the first time he made this suggestion. I have concerns. But if they have his phone, hopefully they are able to find other victims and in big and potential jail sentences to all. Emily, all seems a bit strong for one. All. All. It goes on to say, the victim told police she tried to be polite because she wanted to get out of the vehicle and described the situation as unreal and terrible. Yeah. Can you please take me to the jail now? I would very much like to not be in this car with just you. Yeah, yes. They go on to say that after stating that she wanted to go inside the jail, Reynolds allegedly refused. The woman said the 22-year-old was not doing paperwork and was on his phone as she saw other deputies taking their arrestees inside. According to court documents, the woman was able to get out of the vehicle after she was told to lift up her shirt. Investigators reviewed surveillance video and saw that the vehicle was parked in the area from 9:46 p.m. to 11:26 p.m. Yeah, that's enough time for a false imprisonment in my mind. It's more than enough time for a false imprisonment. Goes on to say during that time frame, the footage showed Reynolds exit the vehicle and walk toward the victim's side before going back inside the vehicle. It also showed the 22-year-old appearing to show the woman items from a possible phone. Right. Because he parked it at the jail and there's video everywhere. Good. Because it sounds to me that the video reviewed and detailed in the court documents lines up with exactly what she said happened and his movements around the car. It's awful that this happened to somebody who was, getting arrested and being transported to jail and should just go to the jail. But I'm glad that he at least parked in the jail parking lot where there's video cameras, because it seems to corroborate what she said. They go on to say, again, this is from the court documents, as reported by KVOA, that when questioned by authorities, Reynolds said he was unsure whether he had shown the victim videos of sexual acts or asked to go to a hotel. He reportedly said the conversation regarding an arrangement of sex was brought up by her. He's like, yeah, I'm not sure what happened. Quote, a view of his cell phone was completed by detectives, which corroborated the exact details the victim provided. The 22-year-old mentioned he didn't know the victim prior to the incident. His preliminary hearing is scheduled for April 6th. We're going to take a look at him being arraigned in court real quick. But when we talk about the sheriff's department having a vote of no confidence 2 days before this arrest, indicating that the sheriff should not be in charge of hiring, it's the same week. He was arrested the same week. He's since been fired, obviously. But I'm kind of worried, more than kinda, about what's going to come out next.
Please state your name, sir.
Travis David Reynolds.
Great. Mr. Reynolds, this is the time for your initial appearance. You were here this morning on charges of kidnapping. That is a felony offense. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you.
And that is the court.
You have the right to be
rights.
represented by an attorney, and it is ordered appointing. Oh, is it the public defender or? All right. We haven't received the information from the Office of Court Appointed Counsel. We're going to appoint the Public Defender's Office for today's purposes. And you do have counsel seated with you for today's hearing.
And you can see the counsel is seated with him.
We are going to determine your conditions of release this morning.
It's a video arraignment.
I have reviewed the interim complaint. I have also reviewed information provided by pretrial services, which lets me know whether there's any prior felony history.
There shouldn't be, seeing that he was working as a sheriff's deputy up until the time of his arrest.
Finally, I have reviewed the state's recommendation, the prosecution $50,000. Would the state like to be heard further?
Yes, Your Honor. $50,000 plus a pretrial services if he is released. This particular offense that is alleged is very, very concerning. Given the occupation of the accused and the.
He was terminated after this arraignment. As the prosecutor is talking about his occupation, that is no longer his occupation.
Given the occupation of the accused and the power dynamics between him and the victim, there's indications that this might have happened before. Oh
boy.
The victim would like to see he shouldn't be returning back to the jail or the incident location. No weapons, no contact. The victim in this case is very afraid of this defendant because of that power position that he had, of the power dynamics, and that he might retaliate against her. And so for those reasons, we're asking for the bond plus the release. Also, it's on the form, but requesting no contact with the victim.
Thank you. And defense.
I am not surprised to hear the prosecution say there is indication that this might have happened before. That does not surprise me because you rarely catch someone on their first time. I am concerned about what we're going to see from this because it's awful.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're asking that you release him to pretrial services. He's a lifelong resident of the state of Arizona. He has housing. He's full-time employed.
Not anymore.
The alleged victim in this case verified that information and appears to be willing to assume third-party custody of the defendant in this case. I would imagine that means she doesn't object to his release.
What?
A little bit of a information gap because I don't believe that's the victim.
I don't think so either.
Okay.
Yeah, the judge is like, what case are we talking about? Because the victim doesn't know this dude other than him being the dude that arrested her and then acted like a criminal, alleged criminal. But no, the victim, he's not going to go live with the victim. That's not, no. Unless they're both housed at the jail, I suppose. They would be in separate wings.
Okay, I get things mixed up then. I apologize.
Wrong case, counsel.
Let me address a few other matters, though, Your Honor. This individual has no prior convictions whatsoever, felony or misdemeanor, no prior failure to appears.
Because he was a sheriff.
He scored a 2 on the NCA scale and a 1 on the FTA scale. For all those reasons, we're asking that you release him from custody here today to pretrial services.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Reynolds, I'm ordering that you're held on a bond of $200,000, cash or secured. If you are released, you'll be released to pretrial services. Monitoring or treatment is directed by pretrial services. No alcohol or illegal drugs, no firearms or weapons. If you do possess any firearms, you must surrender them to local law enforcement.
Yeah, all of them.
No contact with the alleged victim and do not return to the incident location. I'm going to schedule your preliminary hearing for April 6th That will be at 1:30 in the afternoon.
And you heard the judge schedule the preliminary hearing for April 6th. Again, preliminary hearings can get pushed back. I do not know if additional charges will be brought. I imagine there's additional investigation and a substantial amount of it going on. And it was if released, it would be on $200,000 bond. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on this one because, again, Pima County, you've got my attention. What in the world is going on? Am I going to have to watch this show? Law Nerds, I have not watched a moment of Desert Law. I had not been interested. But now that we're here, I don't know. You let me know what you think, because I am still buffering. I'm still buffering from last week. And then we have this. I was stunned when I started getting DMs and people were like, girl, EDB, did you see? And I'm like, is this connected? I wondered, the first thing y'all wondered, is this connected to the Nancy Guthrie case? No. This is a false imprisonment, kidnapping of a detained victim who was arrested and detained on something else. Good Lord. Who's doing the background checks in Pima County? Y'all need a new contract. Someone else needs to do it, because the county lawyers have to be like, we cannot afford this if this continues on. Because I imagine that the victim in this case, and if there are others, is going to sue the sheriff's department. Because in addition to him being prosecuted, there may very well be grounds for her and any others to also sue the sheriff's department. To borrow the words from Creighton Waters, there's a storm of brewing in Pima County. You let me know if you want me to follow along with this. I hope that we have updates in the Nancy Guthrie case. I think they are going to be getting fewer and farther in between, but I think we're going to be getting a lot more updates about what is going on with Sheriff Nanos. And though he wanted to send back a snarky email and be like, good luck with your hit piece, sir, was that the employment record though? Because aside from it was just crashing 5 vehicles. Aside from that, 37 days suspended. That's not nothing. And I'm very interested to see where it goes. So Law Nerd, thank you for putting up with my voice. I know we're getting a little under the weather. It's been a very busy month. Let me know your thoughts on this one, because it's a lot. And I forgot to say it earlier in the episode. So those of you who are at the end of the episode get the benefit. So thank you for being here at the end. You are going to want to have the Law Nerd app, because I have some stuff coming for you this week that you are going to be very excited about. So no, it's not merch. So get the Law Nerd app, lawnerdapp.com, because you are not going to want to miss what we have coming up this week. So with that, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a Law Nerd. And I will see you in the next one. Cheers. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss updates on your favorite cases, you're going to need the Law Nerd app at lawnerdapp.com. That way you can stay in the loop on the cases that matter most to you, and you never know when you're going to catch feelings for a new case. So make sure you get it for free on iOS and Android. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a Law Nerd.